We are back this time with my handheld, high quality camera.
Yeah, exceptional, really. I mean, you really have invested and broke the bank on this one.
Yeah, really, indeed. So we were talking 2 videos ago about your wife's Tudor. Now let's talk about your Tudors.
And we were supposed to talk about the Tudor in the last one, and then we spoke about the GMT Master and the vintage market in general.
But that's what watches do to us, you know.
Yeah, that's me getting sidetracked all the time. So yes, Tudor. Look, there's just so much noise about them these days, and deservedly so, I think, because some of the stuff they come up with for the past 5-6 years or probably more is fantastic, and the thing they're doing for someone who likes Rolex like me or vintage Rolex, they're doing the kind of stuff that got me into Rolex in the first place, because the way that they look and feel is very similar to some of the older models, but with modern upgrades, and you wouldn't necessarily be careful about wearing it in the swimming pool or whatnot. They're made to be worn. They're made to a very high quality. There's a lot to be said about their approach to their design. It's not necessarily revolutionary every time, because what they do is they just pillage their old catalog and update it, but they do it very well, and sometimes they do some very good upgrades, like for instance on the BB58, the new thinner movement with 70 hours power reserve, which is a real plus, and that makes for a watch that is incredibly wearable. I think you described this extremely well in one of your videos, both on the black model and the blue model. The blue model I absolutely love. I've loved blue Tudors for a long time, because it's a color that Rolex did not offer, unless you were going to go for a two-tone or a full gold model. Back in the days. Now obviously you've got the what is it called these days, the Smurf in white gold. So, but if you were into vintage watches at the time, when I started to get into them in the early 2000s, and you wanted a diver with a blue bezel and a blue dial, then you'd go for a Tudor, which was again at that time extremely affordable, and nobody really cared much about them. They were just easily available in any configuration you wanted, because the brand had fallen on the side quite a lot in the 90s. If you look at some of the stuff they were doing in the 90s and the early 2000s, you have to say that it's an acquired taste.
But even today, I mean, the Black Bay line is hot, but when you go to the shops, and usually they don't have the hot models, because even Tudor is very hot, but it's pretty much a disaster era, those two display boxes that they have in the Rolex shops for Tudor. Even now they make really ugly watches. I mean, some of them are palatable, like some of the day some have some charm, but they have some really ugly watches even today in the modern days. So you kind of feel for the retailers who for once they have a hot Tudor. So I can understand that they're gonna baby a bit more the Black Bays.
I mean, you're right. Now the thing is, taste change. Like for instance, many people, me included, a few years ago would have thought that the Patek Nautilus was butt ugly and nobody wanted one, and now everybody is, to your words, selling a kidney to have one at 3 times retail, and they think they're making a great deal. So
and then when they get it, most of them don't pretend to like it, but they don't, because it's fairly thin. It's a pretty
no, they like money more than they like watches. I assume for some of them really do like the Nautilus, and I'm not knocking the model. It's just not my taste for watch, and I don't particularly like watches who pretend to be something that they're not, namely being a sports model, because it's anything but a sports model. I mean, someone who's actually doing sports with that is asking for a significant amount of trouble.
But anyway, these are true sports models.
These are actually true sports models, so and this
garbage on the right here is my garbage, and the three beautiful watches. these are yours.
Yeah, but
So
these,
where shall we start? We were talking about Tudors, but there's also
in chronological order,
badass
maybe.
Rolex over there.
I got this one first. I got this one second, and I got this one third. This and people are going to laugh about it, but I bought that in 2004 for 1,500 euros. You don't see the case back on this one, but it's got an MN80 stamped on the back, so it's an actual Marine Nationale, which I bought in Brest at the time. Brest being one of the bases where the Tudor Marine Nationale were commissioned, together with Lorient and Toulon, and from an old watchmaker, and he just had a lot of them there, and nobody cared about these things. I bought.
Why would people laugh? Because you were the one who had the eye for it, and now they.
No, but
I think they're going to cry.
but the thing is, the thing at the time, again, I mean, compared to a Rolex, I mean, nobody wanted that. Even if you wanted a Submariner, you'd get a 5513 or 5512. Even if you wanted something vintage, and everybody was like, yeah, but it's got an ETA movement in it, so it's like it's terrible.
Isn't it weird that back then, it was looked down on, and that now it's hot, and you wouldn't think twice. It's
yeah, but again,
things evolve, I guess.
At that time, a Rolex Submariner 5513 would cost you 2,500 euros or $3,000 or whatnot.
Yeah.
This was 1,500, and a lot of people would say, for that price point, I'm going to go for a Rolex directly. So they didn't care. Nobody cared about military markings. Well, they started to really care about Rolex military marking, right? So if you went for some of these British Ministry of Defense ones, these ones were starting to get pretty punchy. But the Marine Nationale ones, there was just so many of them at the time that you would go to 10 second-hand dealers in Paris at that period of time, and you'd find 8 Marine Nationale.
Right.
Easy. So it wasn't, and I bought that because I was already using my Rolex vintage now, but I had a Submariner date 1680 and the 1675 GMT Master that we talked about in the last video, and also a 5513, and I had absolutely no qualms taking them to the gym and to the sea and whatnot. But I'm like, it's a bit stupid, isn't it? Because they're vintage models, they're not that expensive. But then, if you want something that looks vintage but you don't care too much if water gets in, you just get a Tudor, and that's what I did at the time. And I kind of like the idea that someone had actually banged this watch around a bit, and it was used for its real purpose, which was to dive. And I'm not sure exactly which squadron of the Marine Nationale had it in Brest, because there were specialized things. So some of them were demining, so anti naval mines. Some of the other were more attack squadrons and whatnot. I can't remember what it was in Brest.
So you might have the blood of many people on your hands every time.
On my wrist, yeah, for all I know, yes.
Which is a very romantic thought.
It is a very romantic thought, for all you know. It's this watch who went to Noumea, and then in New Zealand, when there was a Rainbow Warrior of.
Yeah.
When France covered itself in glory.
I remember that.
Yeah,
story.
that was a highlight.
So the case back, do you care to show it?
Yeah, no, we can
on the watch. So I think it's special engraving.
It's going to be difficult because I can't really take it out. So, but
right.
Let me just pull this out. But this is what it looks like.
There you go, Marine Nationale, number 80.
So yeah, a year of commission for this one, 1980. What's important on this is that it's stamped, it's not engraved. So what the way it does is there's an actual stamp that goes into it, and it doesn't look the same as if it was engraved. So that's one of the ways you recognize them. You also recognize them by the fact that normally, if they have been worn in the way they were supposed to, they were not coming on bracelet, and therefore the inside of the case where the lugs are should be in pristine condition. It shouldn't have any marking from an end link.
Right.
So that's another one. And then the third one is by the serial number. Now, there's one guy who acquired the service logs of the Tudor MN in Toulon, because in Toulon they kept the service logs about when the watches went sent for a service at the local watchmaker and so forth. They didn't do it in Lorient and in Brest. But from there you can assess what serial numbers correspond to what year. So if they bought it in bulk and then distribute a part to those three bases, you would expect them to be each year falling in a specific range. And this one I actually contacted the guy who owns these logs, and this is within 2 or 3 numbers of a watch that has been that was commissioned in Toulon. So it falls in the exact range. And again, I don't think, when I bought it from Brest, obviously I didn't have the decommissioned paper, but they were very inexpensive at the time. So I don't know that the guy who sold it to me, this old watchmaker, would have fiddled with it, because why would he have, right? It was nothing special at the time. He probably just had that, and then I saw on his website that he had a number of them. So he was probably one of those guys where when the divers actually kept the watch, but actually what they were supposed to be when they were decommissioned, they were supposed to be going under a hammer. They would destroy them. A number of them got destroyed.
Why is that?
Because it's the army. So if something is not of use anymore, they don't recycle it or sell it. They just destroy it, because it's the French taxpayers' money, and therefore it's free money. So why would you want to do anything with it anyways?
That's nuts.
But a number of those divers just kept them and didn't let them go to waste. And probably some of them kept them, for civilian usage, and after a period of time said, I want something different, or I want a quartz watch or whatnot, and just flogged it at this old guy. So the Horlogerie Cotinet in Brest. So you can still see their website. I think they still operate. They have a lot of marine chronometers and watches, so that they actually have some pretty cool stuff on this website if people are interested. I got that around 2004. I actually had it fully serviced, because I wanted this to be my beater, and I went swimming with it and whatnot, and to the gym, and I used it exactly in the same way that the guy before me would have done, because that's what these watches were expected to do. Again, I thought it was very smart from the Marine Nationale what they were doing, that they bought this, because it's got every technical quality that you would expect from a Rolex, because the defining point for me in a Rolex is the oyster case, because it's tougher, the waterproofness is better over a period of time. Like if you take an Omega, a Seamaster from the 60s and the 70s, I wouldn't put this anywhere near water, whereas a Rolex Submariner, if it's not pitted, if it's been maintained, you could probably do it. It's just the way that they're built, and that is the point of difference I think that Rolex has. But they didn't care that it was Rolex movement inside or an ETA. They probably preferred the fact that it was an ETA, because it was cheaper and it's much easier to maintain, because they could give it at any local watchmaker, and ETA is just so easy to find spare parts for. That they would be easy to maintain, and if they had cost in mind at the time, that's probably the best buy that they could make. So I was making fun of them for wasting the taxpayers' money, but when it comes to that, they actually had good value for money for what they bought at the time. And
was the accuracy of the Rolex movements that much better than the ETA movements back at the time?
No, I don't think so, because it can be regulated to pretty much the same.
I think one of my most accurate watches is my, Elaboré grade, or at least decent grade ETA put in my Longines diver, Legend diver. It's like 0, it's on the dot. It's ridiculous.
So you have to be a little bit lucky in some of those watches. Now, like for instance, the thing is, this was not a chronometer grade movement, but then again, a 5513 is not a chronometer grade movement. It's regulated in the same way, but they don't send it to COSC, right? Which is the same thing. If you wanted something, a Submariner which had a chronometer grade movement, you went for that. So you went for a 5512, or you went for the Submariner date version 1680, and then you would have the certification. Not that it means anything when it comes to Rolex, because every single watch would have been regulated in the same way. That was more premium because it went to COSC for the certification versus the 5513, which was kind of like the entry, and they didn't care. And that was like sub-entry level, obviously, because Tudor was made to provide the affordable version of what Rolex was being made at the time. So yeah, that's it's interesting to see how things changes, because again, 15 years ago you could find that easily. I mean, you could find them on websites, and again, I paid 1,500. You wanted the decommissioning paper, you paid 500-800 more tops, and you would have had that. So it's this is just sheer dumb luck that I liked the thing at the time. I bought it because I thought it was cool. I like the history behind it. I don't speculate on watches. If it appreciates well, it's great. If not, it's okay. My philosophy of it is I need to be able to take a hit of 10 to 20% on any watch I buy and not sleep over it. And if I can't afford that on the watch, then I need to not buy the watch. So that's how I'm looking at this. Obviously now they've become very desirable because of all of the hype, and also because of the great job that Tudor actually has done about things like your BB58 and the Tudor Black Bay 41 as well, which is also a great watch. It's a bit thick and big for my liking, but they've done just a great job reviving the brand, and that in turn has completely pulled the vintage market up. I was talking about in chronological order. I got this 5512 sometime around 2009, if I recall. I was still in Singapore at the time, and it was more expensive than a 5513, because I don't know the exact proportion, but I wouldn't be surprised if there was like a 10-to-1 or 20-to-1 ratio between 5513 and 5512. I don't have the numbers, only Rolex have them, but you see them a whole lot less. And I just liked it because the patina was great, was very consistent. It had been serviced by Rolex in the UK in Bexley, so it was impeccable. It's a bit quirky because it's a meter first dial, so something that was done between the time that they were producing the gilt dial, which I think lasted until 65-ish, if I'm not mistaken, and then going to the
same on your Submariner here, which Tudor kept.
Rolex went to Tudor went to feet first, I think in 69 or in 70. I can't remember exactly the date, but very late 60s. So that was a bit quirky. Again, given the time I bought it, it was not stupidly expensive. I could afford it. I've worn it quite a bit. I have the Oyster bracelet for that one, not the original one, because the original one would probably have been a riveted bracelet. This watch is from either 66 or 67, according to the serial number. And those bracelets are notoriously fragile. So over a period of time, they would have probably been replaced by a folded Oyster bracelet, which is the most garbage piece of bracelet you can ever think of. Actually, that's what's on my on that particular Tudor. So a folded sheet of metal. So
it's like Seiko.
Jangly, whatnot.
Yeah.
This is it's just ridiculously badly made. They don't fail. But it doesn't give the most impression of quality, really. So modern bracelet on this one, but the rest of the watch was in really good nick, and I really liked it. I kept it. I had several 5513, and then I'm like, it's a bit daft to have a 5513 and a 5512. It's basically the same watch, give or take. let's sell the 5513 and buy something else and just keep this one because I just thought it was a little bit more special than the other one. So
you kind of get a bit more pleasure keeping a tight collection, but just of the stuff that pleases you the most. I think when you accumulate too much, it becomes a bit of a weight on the mind, right?
Yeah, for me as well. Honestly, it's not as tight as I would want it, but I think I'm up to 16 or 17 watches right now. I would need to get rid of at least 4 or 5 because it's too much. Then what you have to do is every now and then you need to maintain them. I'm insuring all of my watches. That costs money as well. So it's got holding costs as well. And some of them I literally don't wear at all anymore. So I might as well sell them to someone who will enjoy them. Just accumulating for the sake of accumulating is not. It's not for me. I like to have a few really nice watches that are special to me. I've kept this one because I thought it was just really so nice, and I think that if you really are into vintage watches and Rolex vintage models, having a vintage Submariner is one of the things you can never really tire of. So it's
what would you recommend starting if someone wanted to have? I guess most people would start with a 5513 to dip their feet into it, but now even those are so expensive. In Hong Kong, it's going to pay upwards of 100,000 for a nice one with some patina.
Honestly, if they really want something like that, I'd go for a 5513 transitional. I know that all the rage is about the matte dialed ones and the maxi dial mark, God knows what. But at least with the transitional one, you're not at risk that the dial has been fiddled with. Some of the painted ones you could have that where the patina would have been rectified. There's one guy who was famous for that. He got kicked out of Vintage Rolex Forum for claiming that all of his watches were unpolished. If people are watching this who are a bit familiar, they'll know who it is. He's still on the Rolex Forum. That guy has, at any given stage in time, 20 mud dial sports model. All of the indices and all of the hands are exactly the same shade, and all of them have super thick cases, which for me screams about the fact that he had the dial retouched. Actually, I have it from 2 different watch sellers in Hong Kong who told me that he has a workshop. I can't recall if it's just across the border in Shenzhen or in Vietnam, but people who are retouching the dials. And what he does is also using laser soldering to put metal back on the case. And then he's got some very competent people who then repolish them, puts the bevel on, and then he sells them as unpolished. And obviously unpolished is something that is absolutely impossible to claim. The only way you can trust someone if it's unpolished is if they are the original owner of the watch for 50 years, and in 50 years they have never brought it to a service and specifically asked for Rolex or watchmaker to not polish them. So you can get the kind of probability that this gets you down to, right? Because again, 20 or 30 years ago nobody cared about it, and if you serviced it and Rolex would just do a polish because that's what part of their regular package. So anyway, I
think watch reviews becomes a really public service
Yeah,
entertainment program.
That's what we. That's
so what does it inspire you? I was showing the two together, a modern Sea Dweller with this 5512. What does it inspire you when you see the two together? One is a very luxury product now. One was made for as a tool, and back in the 80s nobody wanted that. People wanted the Datejust. Well, and now people want the tool that's not a tool anymore.
So this, at the time it was made, that's before quartz watch, right? So people who needed a watch that was waterproof and reasonably accurate would buy this.
It won't let you down, most importantly.
It won't let you down. So it's interesting to see pictures, especially if you look at old pictures from the Vietnam War, for instance, and you see a lot of Rolex sports model or Tudor sports model, because that's what they would do, right? And at that time, in dollars of that era, late 60s, early 70s, it was going for $200, meaning it was expensive, if you were a serviceman, but you could still afford it. So at that time,
so they would get this if they couldn't afford, if they were not an officer.
No, exactly. If they were not an officer, that's exactly what they would get in a PX from the U.S. Army, because again, it works. It's waterproof. They're tough, and it was made at the time. It was a tool watch at the time because people who were actually using tools could afford them. From the moment the quartz watches came in, you had more functions. A number of these watches became tougher because it's not mechanical, so it's going to keep better time. It's going to have more accuracy. So from that moment onwards, the concept that a mechanical watch with a tool watch is just ridiculous. The best. Right now, you want a tool watch, you buy yourself a Casio G-Shock, right? That or a Garmin watch for that matter.
Or maybe a Zin we were talking about, because they're going to another extreme of.
Zin is one of the very few mechanical watches which are still built like tools, but that's down to the case treatment and some of the things that they're doing. So they're still made to be abused. That was made to be abused. That is technically far superior, can take far more abuse than that could ever do, and probably did. But the problem is that most of the people who buy this will wear this like an expensive piece of jewelry.
Like I do.
So I'll give you an example. So the other day I was at Mr. Chrono in Hong Kong. So watch strap shop. Where, I like to go there. There's a guy.
Yeah, I've mentioned a few times. This is where I got this Chrono Keeper, by the way.
Oh, did you know that? Nice.
Which doesn't stay open, so it's very bad for demonstrations. but I like the size of the cushions, which fits my type of wrist.
They're really good. There's one guy there, Mark, who's a great guy. So anyway, I went there the other day, looking for another strap for the Vacheron Constantin, and there was a guy, relatively young, probably late 20s, early 30s, and he had a brand spanking new Rolex Submariner, one of the current ones, ceramic bezel. Can't really recall if it had the date or not. And he was there to change it to a rubber strap. He just had got it, so he had hardly worn it on the metal strap, on the metal bracelet. And I had a chat with him and say, "Oh, is it for the summer and all that?" Yes, it's more comfortable, it's less heavy, but I can't stand the idea of having scratches on the bracelet. So there you go for the tool watch, right? So I have a super tough tool watch that goes down. What is it? 1,200 meters under the sea. But
that one goes down to hell if you need to.
Yeah, exactly. But 99.9% of the people who have this are not going to use it for this intended purposes, and they're going to treat this for what it is, meaning a very expensive luxury product. Because that's.
Do you know where I got that scratch on my Tudor? I was deep diving in IKEA trying to get a hot dog, and I hit some sort of. I'm very proud of this scratch. It was some sort of a post
I think it was not enough of a punition, just for you going to IKEA, because this is where.
Hey, I've been in the pool, and I've been in the. Is it the ocean or it's the ocean?
This is where hope goes to die. Fun fact. There's a guy who was arrested. This was not in Hong Kong, but I think it made the news that. He was putting arrows in IKEA that were leading to nowhere to lose people, and I think it's the best prank ever. I wish I had come up with that idea, because I just hate IKEA with such a passion.
So anyway, we're at Mr. Chrono.
So Mr. Chrono, so the guy was there. He had his good for him, for getting this watch. It's obviously a beautiful watch. The standard of constructions are great, but people have got to stop kidding themselves that they buy this because it's a tool watch. That's not how they're going to use it at all, right? Or
having said that, one thing I find about watches is that when your battery, my battery just died on my on my iPad here. When your battery on your phone dies, because everybody says you got your phone for your time, but when it dies, and if you're really stuck in a rut in a jungle, that's the only thing that might keep you alive, and gives
or that for that matter,
and give you a relationship back to the rest of the world. I quite like that idea. Although we don't wear them for what they are most of the time, you never know what can happen to you, because we live on an island. We go out to sea, and this could be your only sort of thing to hang on to when if you're stuck in trouble.
It's very true, but you could say the exact same thing about your Seiko Villa right now, or
made for that.
I've just ordered, like I've told you, a Zin U50, because I think the size is great. They're tough as hell, and specifically for that purpose, where if you need something for any kind of rougher activity that you don't really mind dinging it, whereas right now a Rolex at the price they're at, you're going to think twice whether you're really going to be doing something too punchy with them. So
which is strange, because the reason of the maxi case is that the vintage ones, you couldn't polish them forever and ever, even though they're made to last forever and ever. So they made it, I think, thicker, just so you could polish, and they removed the bevel so you could polish it, and nobody would be none the wiser after a while, maybe, but I guess it would really last you a lifetime.
I think it's look, I've never seen a case, or the same thing about no drilled holes inside the Rolexes since what was it, 2003, 2004, because it makes the lugs structurally tougher. I've never seen a Rolex of any year where the lugs are failed. I mean, there's quite a lot of metal there, before you go through this. So I think that frankly these maxi cases are an aesthetic choice of Rolex, because all of the watches and all of the manufacturers were making bigger watches, and they just wanted something that looked bigger on the wrist, and that was the end of that.
Maybe. Speaking of bevels, the one of the Tudor's black base is just lovely. Nice touch.
But it's nice that it's interesting that they do it on the Tudors, but they don't do it on the Rolex, and you have to wonder why is it that they wouldn't do it on the Rolex anymore.
It's the Rolex you can really enjoy every day, I think. And,
but this is a new Rolex.
Visually and functionally.
This is that thing that you're holding right now in the blue. The same is everything that I've ever liked about a Rolex, which is the reason why I'm far more likely to buy a Tudor these days than I am to buy a Rolex, because there's not a whole lot of models in the current collection that appeal to me. I made an exception to that rule last year because I bought a Datejust 36mm reference 126 200, which in my view is possibly the best iteration of that model that they've ever produced. It's just a fantastic watch if you are prepared to wear a 36mm case, which is not necessarily the case of everyone today, but it's a fantastic it's a fantastic watch.
But as we mentioned, maybe 41 for your shape of wrist is not going to be comfortable, so then you go 36. So
you mentioning the Datejust. So actually the Datejust 41 is 39.7 millimeters, because there's a few guys on the Rolex forums who have measured it like very, very accurately, and this is the consensus. So it's interesting what they do.
The Germans wouldn't do that error, but the Swiss are a bit more relaxed about dimensions.
No, it's interesting because they had a watch that was effectively 41 millimeter, and that was the Datejust 2. And a lot of people found it unbalanced. Let's
not even talk about it, because I'm missing the one. You should never sell watches, by the way, especially on Rolex. And I miss mine because it was so original with the racing dial. I keep on obsessing about trying to get one back. But so
let's
the 41 is 39.
Is 39.7-ish, which is one of the reasons why it looks so much more balanced, and so much more people like it better than the Datejust 2. Also, they've corrected the proportions of the indices and the hands, so it's a much better watch. It still wears big for my taste, whereas the 36, the case size of it, yes, I wouldn't characterize it as small. I'd characterize it as compact, in the same way as an Audi A3 or S3 is a compact car. It's not necessarily a small car. It's not a Fiat 500 or whatnot. So and it does what you ask it to do, and it doesn't get in the way. That's the other upside of having a more contained sizes for watches. You tend to bang them less than bigger ones. So that